All right, thanks for joining us for Vitals 2024, brought to you by Edwards Life Sciences and HBA. My name is Zun, and I'll be your MC for today. Our first panel of today is Financing Health Tech Innovations, and I want to introduce our moderator, Professor Stephen A. Green. Professor Green has had a very storied career in both private equity as well as investment banking, having been the global equity partner for Arthur Andersen back in the day, as well as managing director of Houlihan Lokey and head of the SF office. Some of you may know that Professor Green was actually an Andersen alum of 1985. So we are very fortunate to have him back with us today teaching. Before I hand over the mic to Professor Green, I wanted to ask the audience to keep questions for the networking periods, as we have a very packed schedule. But we will have questions for product demos and the fireside chat later. All right, I'll turn the floor to you, Professor Green.
All right, thank you very much, Son. We're pleased to be here. I've got a great panel of people to talk about financing innovation. So we'll get going and turn it over to the panelists, maybe beginning here with Biren, to go ahead and give a little short introduction.
All right, everyone, good morning. So this is extra special for me because I did my undergrad at UCLA, lived at Hedrick Hall, had a great time for 4 years. Then I went to go do a PhD at another school across town. I won't mention the name. And I just didn't have the patience for it. And so I ended up doing a master's in computer science, biomedical engineering, and then I started working in medical devices. My entire career has been in medical devices. I did that for a few years, realized I'm not a great engineer. Said, what do I do? Okay, maybe go back to business school. So I only applied to one business school, and it was Andersen, and luckily I got in, and I went to Andersen. And it was in Andersen I kind of saw a whole new world. I switched careers. I went into investment banking specifically for medical devices and did that for a little while, went to a hedge fund for a little while, also focused on life sciences. And it was the same time I was graduating from Andersen, I was doing my FEMBA, that I actually moved into Johnson & Johnson. And I moved into an M&A type of role focused on med tech. I spent the next 14 years doing that for J&J. I was lucky enough to do about $20 billion of transactions for our medtech business. And just a couple years ago, I moved to a different part of J&J, which is our venture capital group. We have a corporate VC called JJDC. I am responsible for medtech investing in the western half of the U.S. We invest pretty actively. We're a 50-year-old corporate VC. I think it's the oldest in the healthcare space. We invest a few $100 million every year into different startups. Our portfolio is a few $1 billion in size, and we're always looking for strategic investments in companies that we think eventually could be onboarded into J&J. And so we have luckily a lot of examples of when we've done that successfully. So happy to be here and share kind of the view of a strategic as you guys think about financing your companies.
Hello, everyone. My name is Steven. So let's see. My background, I studied industrial engineering, and I had a family business in diagnostics. And so healthcare I was born into healthcare. After college, right, I went to my family's business, and the plan was to run the business. And through that, learned I really couldn't work with my father, and decided to go do an MBA. I did my MBA at a school in Boston. And after that, my father thought, okay, you now have an MBA. You're more equipped to run the business. So we tried again. Went back to the family business again. Lasted, I think, 9 months. Really couldn't make it work. And ultimately went off and did my own startup. At the time, my father's company, they manufacture a bunch of these in vitro diagnostic tests. And so you think about pregnancy tests, urine tests, these types of commodity tests. My family's business manufactured those. And so me being more interested in technology and everything took some of that core technology and decided to make it more accessible. And so what we did was basically allowed consumers to do those tests from the comfort of their own home using the smartphone as an analyzer. That ultimately became Scanwell. And so we were the first company to get FDA clearance for a at-home urinary tract infection test. So we did that. Then when COVID happened, we did COVID tests. And that ended up leading to a great partnership with Becton Dickinson, who ultimately acquired us at the end of 21. And then I was at BD for about a year and left now about a year ago, and now I've been just taking a break, figuring out what's next, but also in the kind of same time helping other startups, but also investing in other companies now. And yeah, here to share the perspective kind of from an operator who did financing, and can share also kind of perspectives on the whole M&A process and how that went down, if that's helpful.
Hi, Mira Chaurushiya. I'm a managing director at Westlake Village BioPartners. We're an early stage biotech fund located here in the LA area. I've been with the firm for about 2 years. I came from another early stage life science venture fund called 5AM Ventures, which is in the Bay Area and in Boston. I was there for about 7 years. And I was a partner there, but that's really where I grew up in venture. I started as an associate, sort of worked my way up to partner. My background prior to venture is entirely on the research side, so I'll call venture the happy accident. I spent 15 years in academic and industry science all over the country, all sorts of different areas. I did my postdoc at Genentech for about 4 years, and you go to the Bay Area, you're at Genentech, and you think this is incredibly innovative until you look across the street and see, 10 startups doing something way more fun. So way more impactful, way more innovative, way more fun. So I thought I would go to one of those startups, was talking to a couple of them. Two of them happened to be portfolio companies of 5AM Ventures. And so I met with the founder and managing director there, and instead of taking a job at the company, I accidentally took a job at the firm, and so I've been doing this for about 10 years now. And so if you just follow good people, I think you kind of wind up in the right spot, which is what happened for me.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be here. My name is Aiden Aceves. I'm a vice president at a firm called Insight Partners. I am not a UCLA alum. I'm a UCR alum, but that journey really served me really well as an entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was an undergrad at UC Riverside with one of my professors. That was a chem informatics company and really got me excited about entrepreneurship. I went on to found 3 companies, one in chem informatics space, one in innate immunity space, and one in the fintech space, but I'll save that story for a different conference before ultimately going back to Caltech to do a PhD. When I was at Caltech, I was really excited by where machine learning was going, to the point of the previous speaker about skating to where the puck is going. I saw that machine learning was really going to be an innovative part of the future of drug development and discovery, and so I spent my entire time at Caltech not only thinking about machine learning and how it intersects with drug discovery and development, but also trying to start companies. And in the process of trying to start companies with various professors around campus, I found this thing called venture capital on accident as well. And it turned out that my 6-month stint I planned on doing in VC turned out to be 4.5 years and counting. It really has been a wonderful learning experience for entrepreneurship, and I see it as 2 sides of the same coin. I plan in my career to go back to being an operator again, but being in venture has been wonderful. I started my career with an LA-based firm called Vita Ventures, based very close to here, founded by Ari and a lot of the Kite Pharma founders, before moving over to Insight Partners about 2.5 years ago because a really special opportunity presented itself to me. Insight Partners is a 29-year-old private equity firm based in New York City. We manage about $90 billion in assets, primarily for late-stage growth investments, where we're one of the world leaders in investments in cybersecurity, AI, DevOps, and many other aspects of B2B SaaS. But the founders of Insight over the last 10 years have really started to see healthcare as the future of insight and of where software is going to really have a big area to play. And so we've deployed about $3 billion into healthcare IT and life sciences software over the last 10 years. And about 2.5 years ago, I got the opportunity to come on board at the beginning and help our therapeutics investment strategy launch. So over the last 2.5 years, we've done about 14 therapeutics deals at Insight Partners. We had our first IPO yesterday, which we're very excited about, and we're off to the races. Great to be here with you.
Great, thanks everybody. So sort of piggybacking off of the keynote address, which identified a whole number of key and interesting areas for medical innovation. I'd like to start off by, asking each of the panelists to maybe comment on those market opportunities that they see as being particularly compelling today. And obviously, to the extent they're relevant, you may want to make some comments about GLP-1s and AI, since those get most of the attention in the press. But whatever you guys are seeing that's interesting, maybe you could enlighten the rest of the group here. Why don't we go ahead and start maybe with Mira, if we could, on this one?
Sure. So maybe I'll start with the GLP-1s. We are, just to give you context, we only invest in early stage therapeutics, right? And so all of my comments will be from that perspective. So from a therapeutics perspective, obviously we're looking at metabolism. We're spending a lot of time in neuro, where we see a lot of high unmet need, and finally maybe the advancement from a science perspective to address those needs. And I would say in the metabolism space, what you will see Westlake do is not another GLP-1. But if you start looking at what GLP-1s are doing to the market, there's going to be markets in the future that are going to totally new markets that are created by them. And so the way we think about it is not necessarily obesity and weight loss. We think about it as what happens to these patients when they come off of these medicines. How do you think about anti-weight gain? How do you think about energy expenditure in the context of that? And so we're thinking about a changing market, right? I never would have thought about anti-weight gain as a market, but it actually, now that we understand about what happens to patients when they come off of GLP-1s, which is they gain weight, how do you really expand the continuum of care for them? And so we're digging in really from a science perspective on what are the various ways to do that. And in neuro, I think the most exciting things we're seeing right now are about how to get medicines into the brain. We know they can be effective. We've started seeing hints of that. That's the good news. The bad news is we have a lot of molecules that can be very transformative that just can't get into the brain. And so we're spending a lot of time in that space right now.
Go ahead.
Sure, happy to jump on this one too. To Mira's point about thinking about new markets that are opening up, we're similarly thinking about the new frontiers of patient management that are going to be open once these people lose weight. For us, we're mostly thinking about regaining or maintenance of lean muscle mass as another example. But really, we, like many others, are also thinking about patient convenience factors. So thinking about what the second and third generation versions of these products are going to be. We are a little bit later stage investor than Westlake, so we can have the opportunity to jump in on some of these plays where we're a little bit further along in the development process. To the question about AI is ubiquitous in drug discovery and drug development these days. I spend a lot of my career working in machine learning, and so I find that there's a lot of charlatans in the market who will tell you that machine learning is a panacea that's going to somehow fix holes in people's knowledge of drug discovery and development. It's going to fix basic science, which is done poorly. None of those things are true. AI and machine learning will not change the way drug discovery and development is done fundamentally, but it will make it more efficient. It will make it more capital efficient. It will make it faster. It will make the success rates ultimately go up. That's my perspective. There are some niche opportunities, I think, where really we are going to see paradigm changes, such as the use of virtual patients in clinical trials, thinking about companies like Unlearn.ai, and also just in terms of well, I should say it's really important to understand that AI in healthcare is a productivity tool that can be applied at every aspect of the process, from target identification to lead optimization to selecting your preclinical studies, clinical trial design, all the way up through. And one thing I'm also very excited about is Salesforce management and commercial planning. So from end to end, from when the drug is initially discovered all the way up through when it's sold to a patient, machine learning will be there and it will be part of the process, but it's going to be a 10% boost at each step along the way that compounds, not some sort of magic black box that just somehow creates value out of nothing.
Or I just want to piggyback off Aiden's AI point and a real world example in terms of sometimes AI, trying to solve too much, right? And so for us, we built this analyzer that you used. I mentioned your smartphone to analyze. There were a lot of competitors in the market, some more well funded than us, but ultimately how we were the first ones to get the FDA clearance was when we went up in front of the FDA, the panel and everything, and we're able to clearly explain how our algorithm worked, right? It was very clear, we have the cutoff values and kind of the algorithm that we used versus what the FDA told us, where other competitors mentioned AI, ML, all these terms, and the FDA's basic question back to them was, well, what happens at these edge cases? And with those companies, they weren't quite able to give a clear answer, right? It was very much like, oh, well, we just feed it more data and it will work. And I think it's just one of those things to be very mindful. I think in healthcare, obviously, when you use AI, it's, healthcare is very deterministic. You need to be right. And, I agree with the point that AI can really help from a productivity standpoint, but be careful where you're applying that AI, if you're trying to apply it too broadly, especially in the context of healthcare where, you have to get it right. Anyways, thought that was a great point.
Biren, you want to?
Yeah, and just I'd love to share from maybe a big company's perspective. So J&J, just a little background. So J&J is, you've heard of J&J, I assume. It's a $80 billion business. About $50 billion of it is pharmaceuticals, $30 billion of it's medical devices. And all my comments will be focused on med tech because that's the part I understand. Within medtech, we have businesses in orthopedics. These are like large businesses in orthopedics, surgery and robotics, cardiovascular health, and in ophthalmology and vision care. These are kind of our four major areas. So amongst those four, I would tell you that right now, the area where I see the most opportunity for new technology, startup technology, would be in the area of cardiovascular. I mean, there's still so many large clinical unmet needs around heart failure, structural heart disease. When you think about, what's happening with mitral valves and tricuspid valves, hypertension, and there's so many patients here that we can help, and there's so many technologies that still haven't been developed or adapted for these applications. So this is where we are looking, and we tend to focus on therapeutics. And that's probably something you'll notice with a lot of big companies. We move slow. So when you talk about spaces around streamlining the workflow, like we heard earlier, or AI, we tend to move slow. Now, the area of AI that we are investing in right now are the areas that are linked to therapeutics. So if we see that there's an AI, because AI is just a tool, the question is, what are you applying it for? If it's being applied for the procedure and how you can get a better clinical outcome, we're very interested, especially if we're already selling into that procedure, because at the end of the day, business models matter. You got to be able to invest for a return. So if we can see that we can get an AI technology integrated into our procedure, drive additional cases or more market share, then that AI brings a lot of value. And we are actively investing in those areas.
Great answers all around. Let's just turn for a moment to the financing environment. I think it's probably not unfair to say that 2023 was kind of a long, cold winter, when it came to venture and early stage investing, generally speaking, including in healthcare. Can you see the thaw coming, at this point, or do you perceive that we still got a lot of wood to chop before the markets, really become more robust again? I don't know, Aiden, do you want to cut at that one first?
Sure, happy to. Ask 10 different people this question, you'll get 11 different answers, and obviously data speaks louder than humans, but it does seem like things are starting to turn around. There's still a lot of pain left in the market. I think speaking to entrepreneurs I know closely and people that I mentor, there's going to be a lot of pain in the next couple of months as the last of the runway from the 2020, 2021 party leads to hangover. So I don't think we're out of the woods yet, but we are seeing some green shoots. There's been 3.5 successful IPOs so far this year in the therapeutic space, a couple more going on today. So we're starting to see some late stage signs of life, and those usually trickle through to earlier stage investments. I don't think we're going to see the rush of generalist money back into the sector like we saw in 2020 and 2021 for a long time. And that's probably a good thing. But I think we are entering a time of discipline building that's going to lead to really productive company creation and really good returns for LPs.
Mira? Anybody else want to come up with a complementary or different view here?
Well, I don't know if I have a different view. It's been tough. So I think that's the same view. It's been tough. I'll give you guys an example. I've been trying to syndicate an investment around for a company that we're invested in since last April, and it's actually a spin out from UCLA. It's a great transformational technology, but it's taken 10 months, and we're hoping to close next week on this round. So fingers crossed that I'm not jinxing it here. But it's been tough to raise money right now, and I think what we do, at least in that case, and these downturns have happened before, and what I think strategics can do at that time is provide some balance in the market. So J&J, for example, we continue to invest through the bad times. We don't slow down. And probably from a returns perspective, it actually works out better for us, but we have the flexibility to do that because we're investing off of J&J's balance sheet. But we do provide that. So for example, when we ran into one of our portfolio companies that I sit on the board of late last year, they were running out of money in order to get to the pivotal data that they need to determine what comes next. We ended up just writing a check in the form of a convertible note. We said, we'll just write the check. We'll get you to that point, and then we'll see what happens. And so I do think it's been tough. I think I hope you're right. I kind of agree with you that hopefully it's going to get better soon. But there's still ways to get funding, and I think the good ideas are still getting funded. I'm not seeing good ideas going under.
Great. Maybe we could turn to business models, and I think it's one thing to have great science. It's another thing, as a couple of panelists have already pointed out, to be able to turn great science into something that is a business and can make money. Maybe turning to Stephen as the operator here, when you sort of think about business models you've been associated with that have been successful and maybe those that have not, I mean, what are the key metrics that you kind of focus on that tells you that, you have something that works and doesn't in that context?
So for us, FDA and regulatory clearance was a major hurdle. And I think when I look at other startups these days and everything, for me, I kind of zoom in on kind of the regulatory side of things. And it's generally the part that's the least fun, right? And so, but ultimately in healthcare, everything does come down to validation, does come down to clearance. And so I kind of really focus on, again, how far along are they kind of on that journey? And, for us, the way that we kind of approached this was, we initially bootstrapped our idea by first launching into the pet space. And so unregulated environment, but was able to, from that, generate revenue, was able to kind of, fund a small team at the time, and in parallel working on the human side FDA clearance. And it was when we got the human side FDA clearance that we then we went through Y Combinator and kind of fundraised aggressively at that point. And I think that really set us apart compared to other companies where it was still an idea, or it was still something that could get through FDA. And for us, we had proved it. And so I think that's just something to really be mindful about, is in terms of like the regulatory pathway and where you're at in the process.
Who'd like to comment on that? Go ahead, Aiden.
That's a cool example. I like that you did the less regulated pathway to make yourself default alive, as Paul Graham would say. In terms of business model, at the end of the day, the only metric that matters is returns. Pure and simple. It doesn't really matter where they come from. It doesn't really matter how you measure it. If you don't have an IRR, you don't have an IRR. And I see a lot of people in the market trying to be overly cute with their business models early on while they're burning venture dollars. Sooner or later, those square pegs have to fit into a round hole. We operate in a very regulated industry, which unfortunately means, there's a lot of good that comes from that, of course, in terms of the quality and consistency of the products we're able to deliver to patients, but that means innovation happens slowly. So in terms of business models we're interested in, we invest in a lot of very innovative companies using some of the greatest machine learning and drug discovery technologies in the world. But at the end of the day, the only metric that really matters is therapeutic candidates put into the clinic or licensing dollars from early stage licensing. Now, there are some really early signs that there might be new business models available opened up by AI. I don't need to harp on the same company again, but Unlearn is a really interesting example. So this is a company which makes digital twins of patients and enrolls them in clinical trials, and pharma companies pay us a lot of money to do it. That is a business model which could not have existed 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but it's early days still. Is a company revenue generating? Yes. Is it a net positive IRR for our fund yet? No. So it's early days in the process, but at the end of the day, the only thing we really care about is returns, and for the most part, we're seeing that coming from very traditional business models.
So another way of saying that for us as therapeutics investors is We're taking regulatory risk, we're taking scientific risk, we're taking clinical risk, we're taking all sorts of risk. The last risk we want to take is business model risk. We'll let the tech investors who are, they not taking all these other buckets of risk innovate there. So cash goes one way in our companies, which is down. And on that downhill path, we need to be generating medicines, getting them to the clinic, and generating transformative data. And so the business model for me is talent. If you have people that can take that science and turn it into medicines and do it in the right way, you will get to your endpoint, you will get to your returns, you will get to your IRR. So in some ways, our business model is very simple, unless you get those business development dollars, which then they go down too.
You want to go there yet? Okay. Yeah, I'm going to turn to what could be a semi-embarrassing question to ask all of this group, but I think they've all consented to answer the question, and that is, we all as investors learn something from every investment we make, but in particular we learn something from the ones that don't work out well. So in sort of the experience that you all have had as investors in the healthcare space, maybe without citing names or anything that would get you fired or sued, as the case may be, if you could kind of narrate a little example of a situation that you invested in which didn't work out well, and kind of what you learned from all of that. Biren, you want to take a shot?
Yeah, so many mistakes to choose from. Which mistake should I pick on? There's many. I think I've only been investing in equity investing for a couple of years, but I did a lot of M&A over the years. And so I can look back at the different deals that were done, and some were very successful and others weren't. And one of the ones that stands out to me that really wasn't successful became unsuccessful very fast after acquisition. And that's always unfortunate because, you don't expect everything to work. But when it happens so quickly after you acquire, you really question, what did I miss? And on that one, I think what ended up happening, and I won't mention the company, but it was a reasonably sized deal, like in the hundreds of millions. And what ended up happening was I was advocating to go get a deal done without having done my own homework and building my own conviction that this was good for J&J. And that can happen in a big company because what happens is, for example, businesses move around within the company. You might have a little entity sitting over here in Florida, and they're like, hey, we're going to have that run by some group out in California. And immediately, new people get involved, new leadership comes in, and they're like, okay, we're gonna fix this business. And that happened in this case. And I was leading all the M&A work, and I was told, hey, this is coming over to you guys. You guys got to now go acquire this company. And I jumped on it, and I said, okay, you guys need me to get a deal done. I got the deal done. And very quickly it went south. And I think it was a big learning for me that my name was attached to that deal, and it's important. And this is more of maybe a career kind of learning. It's important to stick to your conviction or develop your own conviction in anything before you move forward with it. And I think since then I've taken a whole different approach to kind of doing deals. No matter when I'm brought in on them, I do my own homework. I make sure I'm comfortable before I put my stamp of approval on it.
I'll piggyback off the conviction point, all right, and I'll share more of a operating, investment that we made that, didn't pay out. And I think this ties also into, picking your investors wisely. And, I mentioned went through Y Combinator, and, YC is known for, you get a lot of these Silicon Valley investors who, kind of claim that they understand healthcare. And what's tricky, YC has done, I think, a great job of getting more knowledgeable and more sophisticated in healthcare. We were probably on the early end of that. And so as part of our round, we still had some of these name brand tech venture investors join the round. And, being a first-time founder, you get enamored with these folks. You get enamored with the brand. And so, the advice that they would give sometimes, you kind of latch onto. And I remember getting advice from one of these name brand partners, and again, we're in healthcare, but this fund very much a consumer brand, and so they were telling us and really encouraging us to push on the marketing spend. And I remember just thinking, because we had cash in the bank, and you're like, okay, well, yeah, let's spend that. And it was everything from rebranding the company. We were looking at billboards, all this stuff, and started investing into that, spending a lot in marketing, and realized that we were like playing the wrong game, right? Yes, our products were used by consumers, but ultimately we were working through partners for distribution. And I think not realizing that early on, and wasting a good amount of capital to just kind of spend on direct-to-consumer marketing, was one of those things. Like, looking back, I didn't necessarily have the conviction at the time to push back maybe against some of these well-known investors. And so I think, again, it's important to develop that conviction and know, again, the game that you're playing.
So at 5 a.m., we did do some tools and diagnostics investing. So I'll talk about a diagnostics company. So we did a diagnostics company in the IVF space, in the fertility space, and it was a space we felt and still feel, has a lot of white space that needs to be filled from an innovation perspective. It's a massively growing market. There's a high need, all of the things. And so this was a diagnostic that would help predict whether a child would be born with rare disease. And that is a big need in IVF when you're screening for donors, et cetera. You don't necessarily just need someone with like 6'5" and blonde hair and blue eyes or whatever you're looking for. You actually need somebody who's a genetic match. So it was really interesting. The technology was phenomenal from its predictive capabilities. We did not think through really what the patient journey was like and how that was going to interface with making money. And what happened was, it's a diagnostic that you have to convince a clinic to have. Then you need to convince the physician at the clinic to prescribe it. Then you need to convince the patient to pay for it, because it's a massively self-pay market, so a whole other problem that needs to be solved there. 3 decisions to sell 1 test. And we realized that was too many points in the commercial sort of path to scale the revenue in the way we needed to scale it to grow the business. And we realized this very quickly in 18 months. And so we made the investment to commercialize the product, realized the headwinds, and shut it down. And so it was a really good learning of, just because you can doesn't mean you should. You really have to think about the path that these products are going to take and how you're going to make money. And obviously, I just went back to therapeutics investing, where we don't have to worry about that.
Well, I'll follow the theme here of tools and diagnostics and say maybe something obvious, but I'll illustrate it with a vignette, which is to be really careful when doing top-down market sizing. So I've seen companies make this mistake many times over and over when estimating their TAM and therefore, their projections about the future. My own first company is an example of this. So the first company I started was a cheminformatics company, which was using simple machine learning to optimize large libraries of small molecules for large pharma companies, and was a successful company in many ways. But ultimately, we fell very far short of our outcome goals, and had a lot of pain, because what we didn't understand, and I naively made the mistake of when I was a 21-year-old undergrad, was that just because drug discovery and development costs $2 billion per NCE doesn't mean that you can, and just because it costs $2 billion doesn't mean that you can impact any real part of that, because the reality of the matter is 65% of drug discovery and development dollars are spent on clinical studies. My tool, which was really around optimizing hit to lead, impacted about 3% of the overall spend. But me, as a naive 21-year-old, was thinking, hey, look, I can accelerate the time to market, and if I can shave 1 year off the development time of a therapeutic that typically takes 8 years down to 7 years, well, maybe I should have 1/7 of the value of that product. Turns out the dollars are not spent equivalently with time. And it also turns out that every dollar you fight for as a service provider in this sort of optimization and screening capability is hard fought against many other providers who are offering the same tools. So just because you see white space from the top doesn't mean it's actually there once you get down on the grounds and understand what the budgets are of the people you have to fight for that budget from, and also who the competitors are who are also jockeying for that budget internally.
That's great advice and great insights. Mira, I'm going to ask you to start on the next one since you're the most prototypical early stage investor here. So, and this is obviously switching gears, but from the point of view of the LA market, what do we need more of to be able to support, as we properly should be, early stage healthcare investing?
The biggest thing right now we need is industry experienced talent. So you think about what LA has, obviously great research, great science. We started a number of companies out of UCLA, Caltech, all of the institutions around here. We're starting to get infrastructure. We're starting to see big companies like Alexandria, all of the, healthcare, real estate folks come in and build. We need bricks and mortar as an industry. So we can't operate like tech does. So that's started to come in. We have sophisticated early stage capital with Westlake around. But we are a really young industry from a talent perspective. We have Amgen. We now have Kite. We have companies that are growing and where people have sort of gone and learned sort of drug discovery and development. But it's actually really hard for us to find excellent talent to lead these companies. And at the end of the day, science will take you 85 different ways before you find the path. And so you can't rely on the science. You can't rely on even the best science to get you there. I probably did 99 failed experiments for every one that worked, right? And that's panned out in drug discovery and development as well. What you need are people who know where the landmines are and not fall in them. And what you need are people who know how to pivot and take the science where it needs to go. And so that's very different than the talent we have here, which is highly innovative from a technology perspective, but not necessarily experienced from drug discovery. And we're working very hard to pull talent from the Bay Area and San Diego to get them to come here.
Others, Aiden, any commentary on this?
Well, I have no real horse in the race as a proud San Diegan. But I used to live in LA for a number of years, and so I'll give you the glib answer, which is less traffic. It seems like there's 3 biotech hubs in LA, and they're all 2 hours apart somehow. But in all seriousness, I think Mira hit the nail on the head exactly. Experienced talent is oftentimes a bottleneck in early stage companies. I see even in San Diego. But the nice thing in San Diego is we have 5 or 6 big pharmas who have a multitude of people who have 20, 30 years of leadership and regulatory experience under their belts who are coming out of these big companies to mentor and train the next generation of leaders. And LA will get there. There's a lot of great momentum, as Mira said, so time will just need to play out in that respect. I would be great to see more active venture capitalists here as well. I know Westlake's doing a great job of really seeding the next wave of innovative companies out here, and Vita's doing some of that as well. But unlike in the Bay Area or Boston, where it's incredibly competitive, it seems like there's a lot less competitive innovators in town here really funding and creating this next wave of companies in a way that really you see in Cambridge and you see to a lesser extent in San Francisco, and it becomes sort of a chain reaction at a certain point of innovation and creativity, and it's a really fun thing to see in those ecosystems. So I hope we get there here in LA, and frankly San Diego could use more of that too.
Yeah, so I couldn't agree with you guys more on both points of talent and more investors in the area. I'll just give maybe one tip for anyone who's in the medtech or health tech space. I would highly recommend MedTech Innovator. And I don't know if people know about this. I'll just quickly describe what it is. It's an accelerator. They don't take any equity in your company. But it's grown really, really well. And I know it well because J&J does sponsor this, which is why I know it very well. But what they do is they get a lot of applicants every year. I think they get 1,800 companies applying every year. And they go through a process and they select kind of the ones that they feel are the right fit for kind of moving forward through the accelerator program. And they choose about 50 companies a year. And once you make that cohort, you get a lot more visibility to just the entire industry, the strategics, the venture capital investors, and they provide a lot of service providers that every startup would need, around legal and finance and regulatory. And so if anyone is got an early stage med tech or health tech company, I would suggest go to their website, understand it better. They actually do like a West Coast pitch event. I think it's done on the UCLA campus, where the companies from around here that are being considered go to this pitch event, they get a chance to pitch, and you get a lot of these investors and strategics in the audience as well. So it's just a great way to increase visibility of your companies.
I'll also just quickly add, they have a tools arm now as well, BioTools Innovator, which focuses exclusively on tools, which is super cool. I worked there in grad school, actually.
Stephen, anything you want to add?
No, I think
you're
that was covered.
good.
Yeah.
All right. So, switching back to financing for a minute, and in panels like this, venture capital, for good reasons and bad, it's kind of all the attention. But we can't forget. I mean, particularly with Biren here on my right, that strategic investors are increasingly a big part of the ecosystem for financing, particularly in healthcare. And I kind of wanted to open it up to the broader group. Some will have a dog in the race and some won't. On the whole question of kind of when it makes sense to have strategic partners get involved. Is it earlier rather than later? Does it make sense to have competing strategic partners? Does that just complicate things for exits and other things down the road? Biren, obviously this is your world, so we'll let you take the first shot, and then maybe others will have comments.
Yeah, so I just was curious if how interesting this question is to people. So how many people actually have a company or an idea, and the question of, should I pitch to strategics right now? Is it the right time, or should I take investment from strategics? Is that even something that is in people's minds? Just trying to see. Okay, so
like it is.
Yeah, so the question of when to pitch to strategics, it's never too early to start connecting with strategics. Sometimes it's hard to get their attention. And so you got to find the right people to go meet with. Usually in a big company, you got to find someone who cares about what you do. And it's usually going to be the president of that business, or maybe the business development person who's supposed to be looking at external opportunities. And these people are at conferences and all that. So it's always worthwhile to kind of go and try to connect with them. Don't harass them. That's another thing probably that will go the wrong way over time, but it's good to kind of be visible at those meetings. When you're raising a round, and it could be as early as a seed stage, strategics do invest in. I've invested in seed stage companies, but strategics are going to decide when to invest based on a number of criteria. But some of them are, how closely related is what you're doing to their core business. The big companies are always most hypersensitive about losing their core business. If I have 45% share in an ablation market, I don't want to lose any share points because it's very hard to recover from that. So if you have something that's going to help me hold my share, I'm interested right away, even if it's early stage. So the closer you are to the core, the earlier we would invest. But the other things that matter is like, how complex is your journey? Like if when you think about a company, the three things I think about very quickly when I meet a company or hear a pitch is market, and that there's a lot in that, but it's market dynamics, it's TAM, it's growth. Then I think about data, like what data is this company developing or has developed that's going to actually move the needle for patients? And then finally, how is it going to be paid? And some technologies, they slip right into a DRG. It's already well reimbursed. That's kind of the best scenario. And others, there's nothing in place, and you have to build that for years after the product becomes commercial. So these are like the three main questions we ask. But the more of these questions that are very simple and straightforward, the earlier a strategic will want to invest. And the more questions are outstanding, they're going to be like, well, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see how it evolves. So that's just natural. But I do think it's valuable to get close to a strategic, because a strategic can help your company in a lot of ways. What J&J does is, once you're a portfolio company of ours, we provide a lot of access to our experts. So, if you have regulatory questions, reimbursement questions, we connect the company directly to J&J experts in the area. We recently had Aetna and CVS come together for a J&J forum, and I invited one of my orthopedics company portfolios to go attend it as well. And they got to interact directly with Aetna and CVS about their reimbursement strategy. And so these are the kinds of things you can get a benefit from having a strategic. I've said a lot, so I'm going to stop. So these guys, I could talk on this for hours, but you guys go ahead.
Yeah, I'll kind of, piggyback off Biren's point about, kind of for strategics, like figuring out like what matters to them, right? I think obviously their core business is important. For us, we were in diagnostics, and so easy to kind of get the attention of the Quest and the LabCorps. And so obviously be mindful if you go with one, it might lock you out from the other, right? And so we were kind of, very thoughtful about when and if we were going to bring them in, if we could bring them in together, which, sometimes complicates things. I guess the other point that I'll make on strategics in terms of timing is that it's never too early. Obviously, things in healthcare take a long time, and so start when you have something that can grab their attention. And I mean, for us, we engaged with Becton really early on in the process, right? In terms of when we first right after our seed round, we had these diagnostic tests, right, and everything. And I think Becton initially wanted to potentially invest in the round, and we were cognizant though if Becton invested, then other manufacturers of diagnostics might not want to join. And so we kind of just hey, we're good right now, but let's figure out a way to work together. COVID happened, ended up partnering with them because of the relationship we had. And that ultimately led to them acquiring us. And so, for me, it was obviously one of those things where build those relationships early when you can, when you think you have something that is of value. And I mean, the last point I'll just make is that a lot of these strategics too, if you want to do pilots and everything, at least for us too, we needed regulatory clearance, right? It was one of those things where we could paint the vision and all these things, and strategic would get excited, but then when it came time to let's pilot it, but oh wait, how far are you along? FDA, do you have? And that would just kill all the momentum, right? And so just kind of be patient at the same time. I know I just said never too early, but at the same time, be mindful of again, if you have something that they could use right then and there.
I know we're short on time, so I'll be quick. The answer is it depends. So what are you trying to accomplish with your business? Okay, two examples. One, we have a term sheet out. Molecule in the respiratory space looks beautiful. We want to put $40 million in. We want to get phase 1 and early phase 2 data. We don't need a strategic. We know what to do. We can hire the right team. We will go to them when we have the data and say, you want this now. Second company, neuro delivery company, great technology, can use it so many different ways. Who has the molecules they need to get into the brain? The strategics. As part of the Series A, as part of the first financing, we're going to them because we can use their insights, we can use their assays, we can use their models. And so we think about it from day one. What is the financing strategy for this company, and what is the business development strategy for this company? And so if you do it that way, you must be very intentional about when you do it. And you can definitely have more than one if your technology is broad enough.
Aiden, final word on this one?
I know we're out of time, so Biren said, please don't harass strategic investors. Please don't harass non-strategic investors. But do come and talk to me at the break. I want to meet all of you, anyone who wants to talk about companies or entrepreneurship. Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, thanks very much, everybody.